If you'll remember, probably like, I don't know, it might even been a year ago, I made a video about how I wanted this one particular Stephen King book to be made into a movie. And it looks like we actually officially got our wish. The Long Walk is finally being turned into a movie. I feel very confident at this point that I can actually say that it's happening. It started filming. It's officially got Francis Lawrence directing. They got Mark Hamill as the major. Judy Greer is going to be it. And they have a cast of boys, actually. So this movie is definitely 100% officially happening. After the long development hell, different countless versions of the George Romero, Frank Darabont iterations that almost came to fruition but never did, we actually got it. So now we can finally talk about it. It's really odd, the timing of it, and me talking about it almost 3 months after I talked about it. It got officially greenlit. I think the last time I talked about it was like right after Andre Overdahl left the project. Francis Lawrence officially was getting into the running, but I don't know how official things were at that point, but I was pretty sure at that point, you know, until we see it behind the cameras, it might as well just fall back into production hell because it went through so many different directors throughout decades. And it's great to see that so much care is being taken. It's got an incredible director. Francis Lawrence is a great director. I'm not that big into the Hunger Games movies, but I really loved what he did with I Am Legend. He's definitely very competent, probably the perfect person for the job. In a lot of ways, The Long Walk is kind of like a prototype for the Hunger Games concept of a bunch of teenagers competing in a life or death scenario, except this one is more of a slow burn because they're not actively combating each other. It's a situation where they have to keep up the pace on a very slow walk. 10 scenarios happen because a blister could mean your death. You get warnings, you get shot if you fall behind the pace. The last person walking gets anything they ever want. It's very interesting too is that the person who they actually cast as the major is Mark Hamill. This is really great casting. I was actually talking to a commenter and we were speculating on who could play the major. We flew some names like Thomas Jane. We actually specifically said we wanted an A-list actor as the major and then kind of the boys to be unknown. And it's seeming like that's what's going on. I don't really recognize any of these guys from anything. They seem like they've had like TV parts and stuff, like they're up and comers. I'm sure that this will be a great launching pad for them to develop their careers. But it's just awesome that it's officially happening, that we can officially say that we're getting the Long Walk movie. I assume we'll get it within the next year, especially since it is filming. I think it even wrapped filming. Although we don't really have any set photos right now of any characters or anything like that. What the Long Walk suits look like, I assume they might go for the green, but I also see them maybe kicking it back because they don't want it to look too much like Squid Games. However, there are pictures of 70s automobiles, cars, tanks, stuff like that. So it looks like they're going for kind of a retro futuristic thing, dystopian hellscape type vibe with this movie, and I'm here for it, absolutely, for sure. I'm very interested to see what they do with this movie and if they adapt the book right. I think that this is probably one of the little known Stephen King books because at the time that it was written, it didn't initially make the splash because he wrote it under a pseudonym, Richard Bachman. At the time, he was writing under a separate name to see if people were actually buying his books because of their quality or if he was just kind of writing off of the fame of his own name. He was eventually discovered, so everyone was like, well shit, looks like we have all these new Stephen King books we never knew we even had. And The Long Walk was one of them. And it's actually one of my favorites. Apparently it's even Stephen King's first, and I guess he was this close to throwing out the first draft, but now we have it, now it's getting turned into a feature-length major motion picture. What's so good about it is that intensity that I kind of spoke about. Very minuscule, small injuries that will keep you behind, mean your death in this scenario. It's very character driven. A lot of it is just these characters kind of talking, getting to know each other, and then the heartbreak that kind of comes with that because only one can survive. And then it also causes tensions between the boys, stuff like that. There's members that are cocky, members that are psychotic. The story just unravels in a way that's so fascinating and makes you just feel so much for the characters. You really get into the heads of them. And it's just disturbing in the way that it kind of shows death and that impulse to live. It's very freaky. I bet that that same level of intensity will be brought to this movie. And something that I'm also glad to hear about is that it's going to be hard R. Apparently this was something that they were not compromising on, and I'm glad to hear it because this story would not have nearly the amount of teeth that it does if it didn't have an R rating. Not getting into spoilers or anything, but Obviously, the whole premise of this book is that people are eliminated. And I remember just that first elimination in the book, even just reading it, just it being so shocking. The description, all of that, the fact that it's also like kids, it makes you feel bad. It's very intense. I guess depending on how it's shot and the delivery of it, it could definitely match that intensity. I'm sure that they will include all those scenarios, the Charlie horses, the blisters, people getting sick, all those small things that when they accumulate and you have to just keep walking forever will eventually cause your death, because you either slow down, collapse, and those who try to run away have a horrible fate. It's a great story, and I'm really glad that we're going to actually get to see it visualized. It's definitely one of the few Stephen King books that I think really has needed one. Off the top of my head, I'm sure that there's others I could think of that I've been wanting to see, but to be honest, it's crazy that this is one of the only ones that haven't been touched yet, and not for a lack of trying. Like I mentioned, several directors, many decades of attempts to get this put onto film, and they've all fallen through or failed. Script issues, I think that this is also just, like I said, a tough story to visualize because they're just walking. And with that, you're going to have to find ways to grab the audience and keep that intensity, that pace, which it could be difficult with the nature of the story itself. When you're telling it in a book, you could get more into their heads, hear what they're thinking, so that kind of fills in the space. But with this, it's going to have to all be through performance, dialogue, and that could be a tough balance to fit. Do I think they could pull it off? Absolutely. Do I think they're going to pull it off? Yes, I do. They got a great crew. It seems like they got a great cast. Although Mark Hamill can be a bit of a one-trick pony sometimes, I'm sure he will play the major well. He is a great pick. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you haven't read this book, do you have any interest in watching this movie? If you have read the book, are you excited? Let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.